Hi, welcome back to the weekend episodes of Stories at Work, episodes where I've been telling you stories to help you build your story bank. Let's start today's story. It was around 6 p.m. on April 15th, 2019. The security employee who was looking at the fire alarm control panel at the Notre-Dame Cathedral in Paris was pretty tired. This was only his third day in his job, and he had started the shift at 7 a.m. He was sitting now in a tiny pale green walled room in the presbytery. His shift would have got over long back, but his replacement hadn't come, so he was doing the second shift. And what he was staring at was the control panel of a very complex fire alarm system. It really was based on several tubes running through the cathedral. And in each part of the tube, in many parts of the tube, there were tiny little holes, and behind each hole was a little device called the aspirator. The aspirator is a little device that sucks in air and tests whether there is smoke in it, and then relays it back to this control panel. Now, this complex fire alarm system was really something that had taken a long time to build. About a dozen experts had spent more than 6 years building this together. By the end, they had over 1,000 pages of the manuals, PDFs, charts, contracts, etc. But unfortunately, when it came to doing that one thing that a fire alarm system should have done, which is not only told you that there is fire, but told you exactly where, instead it gave something which was almost an undecipherable message. Because at 6:18 that evening, the alarm that came up on the screen of that security employee was not just the word fire. What flashed on the screen was feu, the French word for fire, followed by what was supposed to be the location: attic, nave, sacristy. Now, the employee looked at this and he immediately called the guard and told the guard that this was what the message he saw, that there was fire and the location was attic, nave, sacristy. Now, the problem is the attic is neither in the nave nor in the sacristy. In fact, the nave and the sacristy are not even in the same building. They are in two adjoining buildings connected to each other. Now, the guard was standing a few feet behind the altar where Reverend Jean-Pierre Cavou was calling mass to over 100 religious followers and tourists. And this altar is, as you know, at the end of the nave, and there wasn't any fire there. So the guard said, okay, it must be then the attic of the sacristy. So he rushes across to the attic of the sacristy, goes to that place, finds no fire. He calls back the security employee and says no fire. About 4 minutes has gone past from the first alarm. Now the security employee is confused. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want to take a chance and embarrass people and take a risk of calling the fire brigade if this was a false alarm. So he keeps wondering for the next 5-6 minutes what to do while those messages are flashing on the screen. He then decides to call his supervisor, his boss. Unfortunately, when he calls his boss, the phone rings away and no one picks up. Now he is again contemplating what to do. 15 minutes go by, which means in a total of 25 minutes from the first time the alarm had rung. And now the boss sees the missed call and calls him back, asks him to tell him the entire message. And the entire message was fire, attic, nave, sacristy, followed by 11 alphanumeric digits which showed the exact position of which aspirating device, and then said aspirating framework. Now, the framework is the term they had for the wooden panel at the top of the attic on top of the nave, in the main church. So the boss, he figured out and immediately called the guard and asked the guard to now rush to the attic of the main church and of the cathedral. And as the guy rushed up, this was 300 narrow steps, he figured out there was a blazing fire. 30 minutes had gone past since the first fire alarm. The firefighters were now called in. When the firefighters reached, they tried going up those 300 steps, but the fire was blazing now and it pushed them back. It was only because of the valiant effort of a bunch of firefighters who went into the heart of the fire without knowing whether they can ever come back that the Notre-Dame was saved that evening. What a powerful story. Where in business can you use this story? Well, first is the fact that we keep forgetting, that we keep talking about technology and fancy technology, which the alarm system was, forgetting the human being at the end of the system. If that evening, Instead of a 3-day-old fresher on his second shift, it was the supervisor sitting at the control panel. He would have figured out quite fast. But that's not the only expert that will all sit in the panel. What the designers forgot to build in is there could be someone who doesn't understand the gibberish that came out. And often we forget it's the human being that runs the technology and not the fancy technology itself. So that's the first business point. The second business point is about user interface. Yeah? Again, the engineer who put together this message, attic, nave, sacristy, must have thought, hey, this makes sense. The fire is in the attic, the nave gives the x-axis, the sacristy gives the y-axis, and it should be obvious. But it isn't obvious to the real user. And so one of the things we must do in design, and what is now called design thinking, is look at the whole thing with the view or the putting yourself in the shoes of the user. Having empathy of who's the final user of the product that you're designing. I hope you liked that story. Well, you should follow us on our YouTube channel where there are 36 more such stories, and subscribe to our WhatsApp group so that you can download these stories and share it with your team and friends. And do let me know if you have any great stories that you would want me to share. Thank you for watching.